First session, day one, session one of Power Summit 2019. So now the first topic is powering the regional market, and as the regional markets are integrating more than ever, synergies between the various countries needs to be tapped with a focus on electricity sector. Participants from India, Nepal, Bangladesh and Bhutan will discuss the key opportunities and outlook for their respective countries. It is inevitable to integrate the regional market in view of need to synergies available energy resources, desired energy mix, demand, competitiveness and requirements of countries in South Asia. And for the same, to chair this session, I would like to invite on stage Professor Dr. Pushparaj Kharel, Honorable Vice Chairman, National Planning Commission. Our keynote speaker, Mr. R.V. Shahi, former Secretary, Government of India. Our moderator, Mr. Subhranshu Patnaik, partner, Deloitte India. Our presenter, Mr. Ashish Garg, General Secretary, Independent Power Producers Association, Nepal, IPAN. And our panels, please welcome Mr. Kulman Ghising, Managing Director, NEA, as well as Mr. Chewang Rinjin, Managing Director, Druk Green Power Corporation Limited, Mohammad Rokon Al Hassan, Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Power Bangladesh, Mr. Gailus Dragalus, Lead Energy Specialist, South Asia World Bank, Mr. Anirudh Kumar, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Power, Government of India. And without further ado, and not taking up much time, before we start, we need chairs. Can we quickly have one chair here, please? There it is. All right, I would just like to remind the speakers that our panel has the set of time. So keeping that in mind, while you're on the podium or while you're on the panel, please do keep in mind the timing of your speeches, because that is very relevant since we have 4 sessions for today. So on that note, starting off, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Mr. R.V. Shahi, former Secretary, Government of India.
Respected Chairman of the session, our colleagues at the dais, the panelists, the speakers, distinguished officials from Nepal and other countries in the South Asian region and other countries as well, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I express my gratitude to IPAN for this invitation. There have been 7 summits of this nature in the past, and I remember I have attended most of them, perhaps all of them, in different capacities, both in the government, outside the government. But today's summit is entirely different. It has set a tone right in the inaugural session, which one wouldn't have believed that would be the tone in an inaugural session, say, just 3, 4, 5 years ago. It has set the right tone at the very senior level in the government, at the level of ministers. And each minister, and of course, India was represented by the ambassador, Mr. Manjeev Puri. All of them have expressed that not only hydropower development in Nepal is very relevant, is essential for the development of Nepal, but taking care of the needs of Nepal, it is important to promote regional market for power. This regional market of power, that tone we wouldn't have heard just a few years ago, that we do here and we export in different parts of the. Perhaps this summit is also distinctly different from the other summits because 2 important developments that have happened in last 1 year. one that India has come out with, and I will discuss about that, a power trade policy of cross-border trade, which enables what has been expressed by almost all the eminent speakers in the inaugural session to happen. So I have a presentation, and I will follow that. Does it work? Oh, does it work? Can you operationalize this? In the inaugural session, we got from none other than the Power Minister saying that out of target of 15,000 megawatt that Nepal has set for itself in next few years, 5,000 megawatt is for cross-border trade. So that's an important thing. Bhutan, we got a very important sentence, very powerful sentence. Bhutan and Nepal, the amount of hydro potential that they have, in the context of solar power that is coming in a big way, it can become the energy bank for the region. Bangladesh, optimizing the fuel mix for the power development programs, and declared that the historic event of power being produced in Nepal by Upper Karnali, at Upper Karnali project, and a good part of that power being sold to Bangladesh, for which draft power purchase agreement has been already initiated. And in case of India, the ambassador said complete commitment of India in the economic development of Nepal and in hydropower development of Nepal in particular. Will that work now? I have three portions of this presentation. One is important initiatives during last 15 years. Why 15 years? Close to 15 years or a little more than 15 years, I have been associated with this issue directly or indirectly, in the government or outside the government. And during these 15 years, and particularly in last 10 years, most of the things have happened. So the important initiatives, and I wouldn't mention exhaustively all of them, but important of them I will definitely like to highlight, which promote the issue that we are discussing, gradually, progressively promoting the power market in South Asia. Tala in Bhutan and Delhi transmission system is a major breakthrough, happened earlier. India-Bhutan agreement, and I was associated with that agreement directly in its evolution, for having 10,000 megawatt of capacity to be developed in Bhutan, jointly by the efforts of India and Bhutan. India-Bangladesh signing an agreement for 250 megawatt power supplied to Bangladesh, for which an agreement for HVDC back-to-back transmission system to be developed, which was developed in record 3 years time frame from concept to commercial operations. 2010, the Prime Ministers agreed, and 2013, October, we had the power flowing. Bangladesh-India agreement to develop power plant in joint venture, BPDB of Bangladesh and NTPC of India, to do a 1,320 megawatt power station in Bangladesh. And that's happening, that is progressing, should happen maybe in 2021, mid-2021. Bangladesh and India, this is again a trend-setting thing. Bangladesh, India agreeing to have a joint mechanism of joint steering committee, bilateral at secretary power level in both the countries. Why it is important? Because this sets the pace for rest of the countries to have bilateral mechanism at the highest level in the bureaucracy. Bangladesh, India agreeing for expansion of the 250 megawatt by another 250 megawatt. Now we have 500 megawatt by another 500 megawatt. Now we have 1,000 megawatt of cross-border transmission system between Bangladesh and India. India and Bangladesh are agreeing to have radial supply of power in Tripura, and in that about 170 megawatt of power is being supplied. All this has happened in last few years. India agreeing with Bangladesh, this is again a trend-setting thing. India agreeing with Bangladesh that it can access Indian power market through competitive bidding and procure its power. Not only government to government, but it can access the Indian market, and that's what Bangladesh is doing, and getting the most economical rate of power from Indian market, where power is available. Investment Board of Nepal signing 2 power development agreements. We struggled hard on this, one with GMR Group for Upper Karnali, another SJVNL, the public sector company, for Arun 3. Both are largest investment, if you consider any sector of economy in the country, largest investment. Both of them will be, I think, $1.5 billion plus of investment, 900 megawatt each. Power trade agreement between India and Nepal was receiving dust in the shelves for some years. Power trade agreement between India and Nepal in 2014, that also envisages mechanism of joint steering committee, and that has helped in resolving many issues. Right in Kathmandu, SAARC summit happened at the highest level in the governments. So many agreements were to be signed. None of them could be signed. Only agreement that was signed was cooperation agreement on energy. That again is the importance of energy that people give. Bangladesh, India agree for synchronous operation, not back-to-back HVDC, but synchronous operation. This is again a trend-setting thing, because once synchronous operation is facilitated, you won't have that problem of constraint of infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure will need to be strengthened, but HVDC type will not be that relevant. Commissioning of, this is very relevant for Nepal, it was mentioned. Commissioning of Dhalkewar Muzaffarpur. It has 1,000 megawatt capacity. Energy Secretary of Nepal and we sit together. There are other mechanisms of review, and we continuously review. And hopefully, by the end of this year or early next year, the whole of 400 kV system should be operational. That's again a major milestone. A strengthening of and upgradation of a number of 132 kV systems between India and Nepal, and again in the last meeting of Joint Steering Committee, some further strengthening has been agreed with the support of India. Decision of the Government of India to allow a 1600 megawatt power project to be done in India, in Jharkhand, with dedicated transmission line to Bangladesh, and that should be commissioned in the middle of 2021. This is again another major type of a different type of a power project of 1600 megawatt in India with dedicated transmission system. This will promote the trade. Comprehensive guidelines was mentioned by almost all the honorable ministers and officials in the inaugural. That was a vexus issue, so much of concern in all these countries. Everybody has struggled. And finally, we have a guideline now which addresses almost all the concerns, and all the countries are happy about this, which was expressed in this very inaugural session today. And that has allowed this trend-setting thing of GMR supported project, Upper Karnali, to be signing a PPA to supply power to Bangladesh. So that opens up the door for not only trade between India and Nepal, but to other countries. Establishment of transmission interconnection between India and Myanmar, with a small capacity, but it has happened. Sri Lanka and India sign an agreement for the joint steering committee mechanism, and immediately within 2 meetings, they have agreed to move forward on India-Sri Lanka interconnection. A meeting was scheduled in December. Because of some change in the political system there, it will be held little later. World Bank is trying to coordinate the discussion. That's again a major, earlier we were talking submarine cable, now there could be even overhead transmission system. That again is a major milestone. Champion process instituted by the World Bank, distinguished personalities, they have been supporting this, meeting every 8-9 months, and trying to see what best can be done. How will I get that? Leave it now. Trying to see what should be done so that this understanding further develops, and the fruit of those efforts you have seen, it is already fructifying. World Bank institutionalizing the process of 6 monthly round table of power secretaries in a relaxed situation, informal, is not official, and that has paved the way for many of the policy changes that are happening. 9 such round tables have already happened, and the 10th is due in February 2020. Bangladesh, India have already started working on, the technical team has started working on the modality of synchronous operation, which I mentioned to you. Joint technical team is working on longer term transmission system. How much can happen? Outcomes of various initiatives, I have mentioned about Tala Bhutan, about 10-20 megawatt of capacity that exists. The Gachu commissioned March 15, 2015. Mangdechu, 720 megawatt of Bhutan commissioned. Punas Sangchu 1 and Punas Sangchu 2 are progressing. Large number of projects in Kolongchu, some progress is happening. There are certain aspects that are being discussed, finalized. So, as Honorable Minister from Bhutan mentioned, you will have a large capacity addition in next 4-5 years. Our target in Bhutan to achieve 10,000 megawatt over a period of time continues. Government of India has also agreed in principle to support the storage project of 2285 megawatt, that is the implementation of Sankos in case of Bhutan. Outcome of that I mentioned to you, first 500 megawatt of HVDC done, second HVDC done. India Friendship Power Company commissioning its project in 2021. Adani Group is setting up 1600 megawatts, should be commissioned in 2021. Bangladesh has finalized the draft PPA for Upper Karnali. About 1200 megawatt of power supply is happening right now between India and from India to Bangladesh. Dhalkebar, Muzaffarpur, even yesterday we reviewed this with the Energy Secretary, Mr. Dinesh Gimare, and we are trying that if not by December, by January, February, it should be operational fully, 400 kV, operational but at 400 kV. Another important milestone has happened, and that in principle it has been agreed that India and Nepal will have a joint venture company at the level of Power Grid and NEA for undertaking the interconnection between Gorakhpur and Bhutawal. This was stuck up, and therefore MCC portion of infrastructure was also stuck up. Nepal and Bangladesh have set up a bilateral arrangement. That again is a great development. And both these Arun 3 and Upper Karnali are progressing. India, Pakistan, I should definitely mention when we are talking of South Asia. So far as India is concerned, right at the level of Parliament, this was mentioned that 500 megawatt of power India has agreed to supply. They have to work out the modalities. There has to be a time when it should be discussed and done, but in principle, that exists. Just about 8-9 months back, or maybe a year back, a joint study team of BBIN countries, they worked together and have formulated and have come out with the vision for transmission infrastructure. At present, 3,000 megawatt plus is operational. Another 2-3 years' time, you will have another 3,500 megawatt. 7,000 megawatt additional is in the planning stage. So therefore, about 12 to 14,000 megawatt you can expect in 5 years' time frame to be the, you can imagine, from a 0 to 12,000 megawatt. And vision is that potential and reality in next 10 years, 15 years, it will go up to 50,000 megawatt. So that 50,000 megawatt would be the level at which South Asia, we are talking of developing regional electricity market. That is, and this was done not by Indian Power Grid Corporation, it's jointly done and jointly presented in the Power Secretary Roundtable. Few things I have to say. How do we accelerate? How do we further accelerate? BBIN we are focusing. BBIN-M and Sri Lanka focusing because we have issues in case of Pakistan. Therefore, this portion is being focused, and that strategy has paved the way. So that stress will continue. Technically synchronous operation, I'm sure there are technical teams here. The moment they work out the details, synchronous operation between India and Bangladesh will happen. Then we have synchronous operation with Nepal, we have synchronous operation with Bhutan, we will have synchronous operation with Bangladesh, and then you see the whole grid is one grid, BBIN grid. Strengthening the transmission infrastructure, not only cross-border, but within the country. Again, we review almost every 2 months with the Energy Secretary here, that if you can interconnect, but if you don't develop the intra-country transmission system and distribution network, then it doesn't happen properly. We have to stress on the Sri Lanka-India transmission interconnection. That is one thing which we have been talking for decades, and perhaps this is an idea whose time has now come. It should happen. 765 kV transmission system connecting northeastern states of India, passing through Bangladesh and coming to other region of India. That's another thing on which technical teams are working. Development of hydro projects in Bhutan and Nepal. I have also the point which the Honorable Minister of Bhutan mentioned, could be a good backup for massive expansion of solar power capacity in India. He mentioned a phrase, energy bank for BBIN countries as an answer to solar problem during the evenings. I have seen now 7-8 years, of course I saw this even as Power Secretary. Nepal has tremendous potential. Streamlining of systems, procedures, forest clearance, land acquisition, security. These are issues which we keep talking, highways. That will be important if we have to get to the figure that we are talking in case of Nepal. In case of Bhutan, there has to be a flexibility of institutional arrangement. Every project cannot be on Government of India and Government of Bhutan IG model. There could be different institutional framework that's it. These are the ways that we can accelerate. Price of solar and wind has made it very difficult for hydro. The hydro to be competitive, I think the question of free power, free bids, free equity, those policies will have to be revisited. If we don't revisit, then there could be developers, but they will not be able to do the right PPA. So I think these are things which we need to relook to see that relevance of hydropower in terms of its being able to be competitive continues. Multilateral agencies could consider long-term funding, backloading of tariff, regulatory commission should consider that. Intra-country transmission system would be a must so that when power is generated, we have supply going on right up to the last portions. A regulatory framework, this again is a historic thing we are able to do. In the last roundtable of power secretaries, we could have the chairman of Regulatory Commission of Bangladesh and chairman of Regulatory Commission of India. They were very kind to attend and give their views of how do we align the regulatory policies and regulations which should not stand in the way of cross-border power trade. And that is a very good development that has happened. With that I end what we have achieved, what more we could achieve, and what are some of the suggestions that could be seriously considered to accelerate the pace of developing regional market. Regional market or no regional market is not an issue today. We don't have to say. At the highest level in the inaugural, that has been said. Now we have to see all the functionaries work in a manner that this process is expedited. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the former Secretary of Government of India, Mr. R.V. Shahi, for the keynote speech. We apologize for the technical glitch on our screen. Moving on. We would like to now move forward with the panel, and I'd like to hand it over to our moderator for the first session, Mr. Subhranshu Patnaik, partner, Deloitte India.
Thank you very much. We have a pretty high-powered panel here. Let's start with Mr. Garg, Mr. Ashish Garg, who has a brief presentation, I think, to set the context for how Nepal is looking at cross-border trade. And then we'll move on with questions to the panel.
So I'll quickly run. I have 10 minutes and a lot of figures and data to share. Can you please load the presentation? Yes. Yeah, the next slide, please. You can give me the... Yeah, so this is where we stand in Nepal as of today. This is the latest number. The total capacity in Nepal, 1280 megawatt, in which NEA and the government subsidiary company 673 megawatt, and the private sector 607. So it's like almost 50-50. Currently it's 52-48. This is the Nepal's present installed capacity. So it's not working. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is the load curve taken on June 30, 2019. This is at 7:55 hours in the evening. This is from the NEA's annual report. You see around 8 p.m. we have a peak load in Nepal. So on this day, we had 396 from NEA, from private sector 343, and India 491 megawatt, and NEA storage 89. Can you move to the next slide, please? So on the peak load, wet season on July 16th, we had like 38% coming from India. The Indian ambassador mentioned, 50%, and during dry even, he came up with the figure 90%, but it may not be so high, but it is high. So this is where we stand in the peak load situation. So, but there is another story. See, there is an export number also. In last 12 months, Nepal has exported, if you see in the month of, this is Nepalese calendar, the last Ashar, which we say July, 15,644 megawatt hours has been exported to India. This is just half a percent of the total energy consumed in Nepal. So we are exporting also. So already Nepal has started exporting. So but it is a net importer though. So now look, now let's see. The situation is not so good, we are having a deficit, and the surplus may be only during certain minutes or hours during the day in the wet season. But we have a lot to achieve. In 2019, if you see, we are currently at 1281 megawatt. But in 2020, we add another 1000 megawatt. These all are under construction. In 2021, we are at 3339. In 2022, 4687. 2023, 5249. And in next 5 years, we are at 6,700. So we add 5,500 megawatt. Now this is for sure because these all projects are under construction. So once you hit the site, unless there is a disaster, the project would be completed. Maybe 1 year or 6 months late delay, but the project would be completed. So Nepal, where it is standing now, for sure we are marching ahead with a very high surplus. So these are some projects. So you see from the NEA and the government side, these are the 7 projects happening in next 5 years. The big one, Upper Tamakoshi, will be live next year. And the other projects, Tilime Senjan, and the storage Tanahu should be coming in by 2024. Now this is private sector. Lot of work, 120 projects of 2,613 megawatt are under construction, and 137 projects, 2,870 ready for construction, means all signed PPA, financial closure, at the verge of financial closure with environmental approvals, everything. So, and you see the name of the projects also. So we are within 100 megawatt, 20, 30, 40, 80, 90. So these all are projects which commissioning date. Upper Solu 23 megawatt will be commissioned in next 2-3 weeks. the lower Modi in early 2020. So, this all have a date. This energy is coming in the system. And foreign direct investment projects, so we have the big one, Arun 3, and the GMR 900 megawatt, which is yet to start. Plus we have investments from, we have some Chinese projects, one Korean, the Upper Trishuli, which will be commissioned in 2024. So not much of foreign investment, but things are really happening here as well. But now talking of demand, now there is a big paradox. We, on the day of Diwali, the festival of light, we had a total load of only 1200 megawatt. The country only consumed 1200 megawatt. Maybe some industries were not working on a holiday, but our demand is somewhere between, though our MD from NEA, he's here on the panel, he's the owner of all this information. So, but around 15 to 1600 is what our demand is. And it's not increasing, it's not increasing as such. So if you look at these two lines, there is an NEA estimate, the yellow line, which shows our demand. And if we assume 15% growth, the demand will be much lesser. So we are heading towards a big surplus. So if you see, with NEA estimate, in next 5 years, we have 3,000 surplus. And if we take 15% growth, we have 3,900 surplus. So we have huge surplus. And this demand numbers we'll discuss in session 3 also. Our demand increase is a big challenge because we are yet to migrate to the gadgets or electrical cars or industrialization. This is all very slow process. So we are hitting a very, very tricky situation. Where will our power go? And though we have, as private sector, contracted with NEA, but NEA has to sell to the regional market, whether it's India, Bangladesh. And now what about projects beyond this 6,700? Now what is the fate of the projects beyond this? So private sector, under study, where money has already been invested, 16,235 megawatt. These are licenses issued on which the promoters have really put in their money. You can see the list of projects also. There are a number of projects, starting from Bheri to Mugu Karnali to Kali Gandaki Koban to, there are so many projects. And then NEA initiated project. NEA is working on these projects, 3,981, Upper Arun, Modi, Dutkoshi, Tamor, Tamakoshi, Chainpur Seti. This is from NEA's annual report. And then we have the investment board, showcase projects. This is for foreign investors. Already Tamor is with Power China now. The agreement should be signed. And Lower Arun, the tender is called, Sunkoshi, West Seti. So 4,893. So you have so many thousands. So we are talking of this additional 25,000 megawatt where money is actually put in. But now we as private sector are quite worried. Where will our power go? At what rate will it go? Are we really competitive? What we should do? So this is the anxiety which is bothering us very badly. Now this is, a very interesting story which we sitting here in Nepal feel is the situation. India, 3,62,000 megawatt, in which coal is still the king. Do we have wind, solar, everything in India, but coal is still the king. If you look Bangladesh, coal is, natural gas is the king, but we have furnace oil and diesel also. So, it is quite a fossil fuel based generation in, with our neighbors. And you see Nepal and Bhutan, we have 80,000, Bhutan 30,000. So only hydro. We have only hydro, and our neighbors are currently on fossil fuels. So we have a great story to sell, that we have this clean power, and there is a big climate change. There is a big value to all this. And this has water issues also on flooding, glacier melting in the Himalayas. So probably, other than the pricing, other than the tariff, we have a big case to sell as a Nepal's hydropower, or maybe even Bhutan. So I think this is the time with me. We could have talked a lot, but things are really happening in Nepal. We are at 1,280 megawatt, but we will for sure hit 6,700 megawatt in 5 years, and we have 25,000 megawatt really good projects. But the question remains, maybe in next 2 days we'll have some answers. What will be the tariff, who will buy, whether it is which DISCOM will buy, how they'll buy, what is the transmission connectivity, what is the law, what is the political harmony, and what is the safety of investment, what does a foreign investor want, which investors will come in, NHPC has come in, how much they'll pick in, or who are the other investors. So that is it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garg. So without further ado, actually we're running a little behind time. So picking up on your points, Mr. Garg, your anxiety around where the power needs to find a market given all the potential that exists primarily in Nepal, let's take that up straight away with Mr. Ghising. Sir, what are your thoughts on how power trade with the neighbors is getting implemented, both from a public sector standpoint as well as private sector projects? How are you preparing yourself institutionally, commercially, regulatorily, addressing power trade with India and with others in the neighborhood? Thank you.
Hello. With this presentation that we have seen different datas. Every time datas are something different. In Nepal, I think every week we have different supply situation. Every day there are some projects coming in operation. So there are many private projects. In this year only, we have 52 private projects coming in operation. So every day data is changing. Now the demand of Nepal, as presented by Ashish, is not like that. I think demand is increasing. Last 3 years time, demand has increased just double. The energy demand has increased, consumption has been increased to double, but this peak demand, capacity demand is almost constant. So that is very good for our system also. Its load factor is almost 80% now. So there is a big increase in demand. Domestic demand itself is huge because we have now per capita consumption of 245 to 250 kilowatt per hour. That shows that the huge demand gap is there because this per capita consumption of India, if you say 1200 unit per capita, for 1200 per capita we have to increase this supply should be around 15,000 to 20,000 megawatt. So there is a huge potential of demand in country itself. I don't say that demand is not there. Now the cross-border trading. So we are trading between India and Nepal for last 15 years. There are different mechanisms, the power exchange mechanism. We have different connectivity in 11 kV, 33 kV, 132 kV, and 400 kV. Different places, different sites, different connectivity is there. So the power exchange mechanism we are doing with Bihar and UP and Uttarakhand. We are doing power exchange mechanism, daily trading, net metering, how much we trade, export, how much we import, that is netted, and we pay as per that condition. So next is we are doing PTC with PTC for last I think 10 years. We are doing power trading with PTC from Tanakpur and with NBBN from Dhalkebar. So trading is happening. And next, within very, very short period of time, we are going for a day-ahead market of India also. Day-ahead market, it is going to be the CBR, Conduct of Business Rule, is going to be finalized very soon. I think that it will be finalized within a month. Last time in JC meeting, we have discussed and they have committed to conclude this CBR within 1 month. So this will open the market of daily market also in India. So daily market means every 15-minute block we can sell or purchase. That will open the very good market for Nepal's hydropower, because we have now very the challenge. The most important is the challenge of addressing the supply and demand situation of daily, hourly variation of load. Every hour load is varying, but supply is constant. So that is very much important to address, and seasonal variation is there. So for seasonal variation, we have to go for regional as well as bilateral market. So there are so many trading mechanism going on, and not only trading, market integration, this grid integration is going on Just now, Mr. Arabi Sai has already stated that synchronous operation. Now we are going for synchronous operation very soon. I think this grid operation and this grid code, common grid code is going to be finalized very soon. And we are going for next transmission interconnectivity for bigger sizes. There are around 11 transmission interconnectivity already envisaged for Nepal and India. So there are a lot of energy market in regional as well as domestic market. So I think market is not should not be a big problem for this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gising. That was that was very comforting, a pretty comprehensive set of steps that you outlined. Can I bring Adasho Rinjin into the discussion? Because you've had long experience of trading in the neighborhood, particularly through long-term PPAs. How was that panned out for you? And can we draw some inferences for Nepal also in terms of not just short-term trading, which of course is a necessity, but also long-term PPAs with Indian utilities, maybe?
Thank you very much. I think when we sit here, I think most of us know that Bhutan has been exporting surplus energy to India for a very long time. It is done mostly at the bilateral level, and as was pointed out, it is of course on the long-term power purchase agreements that we have. Our experience, of course, with our power purchase agreements with the Government of India through PTC India, through which we sell almost 100% of our energy at the present juncture, except for a small project called Dagachu, which we sell through Tata Power Company. If you look at investments, I think somebody mentioned this morning that you see a market and then you want to access that market, you need investments. And for Bhutan, we have been quite lucky that India has been actually very willing to invest in Bhutan. And to the benefit of Bhutan in many ways, in that for a small country like Bhutan, it would possibly be very difficult to get that kind of investments. You're not talking about small projects. You're talking about, as Mr. Shahi mentioned, the most recently commissioned projects are Tala, 1,020 megawatts. The most recent one is 720 megawatts, which is Mangdechu. They cost billions of dollars when for a small country like Bhutan. It's very difficult to sort of get investors at that level to come in and say that we want $1 billion over the next 4 or 5 years to be invested when you are not very sure how your energy is going to be sold. So I'm very happy to hear Mr. Gising say that for your projects from Nepal, that there is a possibility through the new markets that are opening up in India that you should be able to sell. But ours are much more bigger. We have long-term arrangements with the Government of India, and the way we sell power is that any surplus power that we have, we put it on the grid, and it is synchronous operation. Therefore, we are in one grid with India. Therefore, when we generate electricity in Bhutan, we are really not aware of what is being our use and what is going to India. Of course, we track it, but we assume that whatever we generate, what we consume, the leftover is going to be actually surplus and will be sold to India. And in the winter months, of course, when we generate slightly lower and we need India to back us up, that also happens automatically. So it has been a very good experience as far as we are concerned with the long-term power purchase arrangements that we have had with India. And this is going to continue also with our new, the bigger projects like Puna Changshu 1, Puna Changshu 2, 2,200 megawatts that are under construction. Then with the Kolongchi project, 600 megawatts. When you look at that, 2,700, 800 megawatts under construction at the present time. We have tried to access Indian market through our smaller projects, just like Nepal has. We have built one or two 100 to 200 megawatt projects, and we hope to build similar ones in future also. Those we are trying to access through the new emerging markets that India has recently opened up. day-ahead markets, short-term markets, medium market, and all those things. And one of the lucky things that we have had in dealing with India on the transaction is that the transmission lines, the transmission systems, the networks are planned together with the generation. So when we plan for 10,000 megawatts, as Mr. Shahi was mentioning, then we don't plan for 1,000 megawatts. We plan for 10,000 megawatts. So we have actually an overcapacity of transmission lines at the present time. We have a number of 400 kV transmission lines. We have a number of 220 kV transmission lines. We are connected at 132 kV. In very small places, we are connected at 11 and 33 kV, but that's for only localized use. But our cell of surplus power and the synchronous operation with India is at 220, 400 and 132 kV. So I would like to say that yes, our experience with our present setup, the long-term PPAs that we have with our projects have been excellent, and I think maybe Nepal could also try to emulate the same arrangements that we have with India at the present juncture.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjan. Can I now bring in Mr. Kumar, Honorable Joint Secretary? While we discuss about the Indian market, one of the concerns for observers could be that India has struggled to actually sign PPAs as far as hydro projects are concerned over the last 3-4 years in particular. There has been the slowdown as far as hydro PPAs is concerned. And I know that you personally have been looking into that, reeled out a lot of measures recently, only last year, in terms of how to change the situation on the ground. Could you throw some light on that in terms of the cross-border discussions that we're having? Because central to all this is, of course, utilities signing on to PPAs, hydro PPAs in particular.
Thank you, Shubhranshu. I'll just take half a minute before I respond to your question. Let me commend and appreciate these organizers of this conference. In my 35 years of career, I have attended large number of conferences and seminars, but I have rarely seen such a focused conference, and the quality of speakers have been outstanding. The content of all the speeches have been outstanding. The subject is really very topical. I think there would have been no more contextual subject as on today in this region, where this region is endowed with almost as much as 350 gigawatt of hydro potential. Unfortunately, we have been able to exploit only 55 gigawatt of that. When I say this region, I include entire South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. So our exploitation of the potential is pitiably 13% of the total hydro potential. And it's going to be a truly remarkable, I think, achievement if we can increase from 13% to 20%. Now, responding to this question, the credit goes for this present depressed market largely to Mr. Shahi. I'll say credit because the reforms which he introduced in 2003 really led to humongous capacity creation in the country. And from 2012 to 2017, we created 100,000 megawatt of additional capacity only in conventional sector. The renewable capacity is in addition to this 100,000 megawatt capacity, and it was all because of the reforms introduced during Mr. Shahi's regime. So I see this present energy glut in India being a temporary phase. Now the capacity addition has already slowed down. We are almost adding no capacity in coal sector, only whatever capacity is under construction, we are carrying on with that. No new thermal capacities are being planned. Whatever new capacities are being planned are in hydro or renewable. So I believe this surplus will be consumed in next 3 or 4 years easily. We have a surplus capacity of around 30 to 40,000 megawatt today. And so far as hydro is concerned, I don't see the surplus capacity as a constraint. Because as we all of us know that hydro is a natural battery. And being a truly responsible global citizen, we intend to increase the share of renewables in Indian energy basket to as much as 50% by 2030. Today, the contribution of fossil fuel energy in power sector is approximately of the order of 80% today. We want to bring it down to 50%, and that will require hydro. So I don't see any problem in consuming and accepting hydro in energy if we want to reduce our carbon footprint. That's, in short, I would respond to your query, that we are committed to increase our renewable capacity. Honorable Prime Minister has given a commitment to take it to 450 gigawatt by 2030. And we have done modelings CEA has done modeling, which shows that our grid can accept 450 gigawatt of renewable, approximately 300 gigawatt of solar and 140 gigawatt of wind, plus some other renewables. And that will require hydro to balance. So I see a very bright future for hydropower in the entire subcontinent. And we will be able to definitely play a major role in bringing down the carbon footprints in the world.
If I can turn to Bangladesh next, bring in Mr. Mohammad Rokon. Can you throw some light on how the Bangladesh trading with its neighbors has gone about, and what are the next steps that you see in your ambition of actually procuring even from Nepal?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Distinguished audience, very good afternoon to you all. I'm really honored to be present here. And talking about cross-border electricity trading, especially with Nepal, the experience with India is very good, as you the ex-secretary of India. Currently, we are importing exactly 1,160 megawatt from India, 1,000 from Bhedamara, Bahrampur, and 160 from Tripura to Kumilla. And another project of Adani Group is also under process. So the experience must have been good. So new projects are coming. Now talking about importing hydropower, as we all heard from the minister's speech, that 500 megawatt power purchase agreements and its nitty-gritties have been finalized. Anytime now, things will start to develop. Now, why Bangladesh should be interested in importing power from Nepal? Now, you know, when we start developing, sometimes we tend to forget the proper way of developing. In terms of electricity generation, has been the case for Bangladesh, like many other countries. We are really unfortunate about that. But Nepal is really fortunate in these terms, having so much of hydropower availability and promise. So we are very serious about this Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goal. A very special position has been created in our bureaucracy, a very new one, a principal coordinator of Sustainable Development Goal. So we are really serious about it. Our 2020 Pardon me. Our goal is to have 10% renewable energy by 2021. I'm not very confident that will be achieved very soon, but we are on the right track. You know, in Bangladesh's case, solar has not been a very successful case because, you know, the land in Bangladesh is very fertile, and whatever land is you use to obtain solar energy is going, the cost-benefit analysis is not going your right direction. So hydro is a better opportunity for us. You know, the land requirement, we have only around 40 megawatt of solar as of now, and the highest one being 20 megawatt. So having said that, we look forward to more regional cooperation, not only with Nepal in terms of trading electricity, but we look forward to having more trilateral and multilateral agreements and cooperation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Callius, if I can turn to you last but not the least, how do you see the role of multilaterals in taking this forward in terms of facilitating cross-border trade, also in terms of looking for investments which go towards promoting this. So over to Gallius. Gallius, if you could come in there.
Thank you very much. First, let me say how privileged the bank is to be working and to be invited to all of the client countries represented here on the DS and elsewhere in South Asia. And we're really humbled by the trust and thank them for their confidence. In dialogue on national sector development challenges and priorities, what we're seeing is that cross-border electricity trade is starting to be discussed as a part of the solution. And I think that sentiment I wanted to share with you, along with this optimism and tone that has been set at the inaugural session at this conference. Of course, we're open-eyed about the challenges, but we're convinced that we are in, indeed, a no-regrets scenario. All of the economic analysis that has been done by us, by ADB, by USAID, in fact, we've redone our analysis in 2019, not published yet. We've submitted a paper to IEEE, and if accepted, you'll see that we tested the hypothesis that short-term trade is good for everyone. And in fact, if you look at just 1 gigawatt of additional transfer capacity, the payback is very short, no matter whether you look on an additional gigawatt of transfer capacity between Bangladesh and India, between Nepal and India, or even indeed between Sri Lanka and India. And even on the long-term basis, will it cause a surplus that will shrink the opportunity? In fact, no, there's not that much of a difference because of the need for balancing support and because, as Mr. Kulmangising has said, the demand and supply balances change on a minute-by-minute basis. The ability now to think about bidirectional trade, also on a short-term basis, opens up new value creation. What are we doing? You're asking that question. I think we're very committed to significantly support greater regional energy cooperation in the region. We work in 2 different markets. We work on integration of Central Asia, South Asia, on the Afghanistan, Central Asia, Pakistan corridor. You may have heard of a 1,300 kilometer transmission line project, CASA 1000, that is going well. Contracts have been finalized for the construction. Construction is starting this year. And then on the Western Corridor in BBIN and S, we split the work between dialogue facilitation and project level support. In short, I think the theory is correct to say that the more projects there are, the more there will be physical connections, the more confidence there will be, especially in investment in large hydro and generation, that the electrons, the clean energy, will reach the markets. Then, of course, as there's greater understanding, greater interaction at the technical level as well as at the policy level, there will be an alignment and harmonization of regulations, code standards, and scale up, and perhaps even in the medium term, some market development beyond what is now possible. But I do want to mention one thing. During the conversation here, we may talk about alignments of regulatory frameworks, etc., about how things need to improve. Let's remember that all of this optimism is built on 10 years of imperfect regulation. Everyone on each side of the border made things happen to a point where we have this ability, this gigawatts of, and the possibility that in the next 5 years, I think I'll just stop there, and happy to talk with everyone fix later on.
Thank you very much. What we'll do next is we've just about 10 minutes left, I guess. So we'll open the floor for questions from the audience, and then I'll turn back to Professor Cadell to summarize and provide closing comments. Is that fine? All right. So, yeah, gentleman in the middle. Do we have mics for the audience? please do identify who your question is directed towards.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to say something. Well, I think listening to I'm SK Malla from Nepal. Listening to Mr. Garg on his presentation on electric power demand and supply, I was a bit worried. And I thought I should share my worry with all of you. Well, he says that by 2024, according to a demand estimate of 15%, there is going to be a surplus of 4,000 megawatt by 2024. That is 5 years from now. And if you follow the NEA demand forecast, which I don't know what percentage it is, I hope I'll be able to listen to that, the surplus is going to be 3,000 megawatt. Now, I think if it is 15% demand forecast, I think the demand elasticity vis-a-vis the economic growth comes to around 1.9. And if it is more than that, it's going to be more than 2. To my experience, I think the demand elasticity has been something of the order of 1.4 to 1.6. So I was just finding it difficult to understand how this happened, this disparity between demand and supply. That's one thing. This leads me to believe that perhaps are we not over-investing in power sector? This is because, well, I think by 2024, whether we take the 15% demand growth or the NEA demand forecast, whatever it is, the surplus is going to be 3,000 megawatt. How are we going to consume 3,000 megawatt in the next 5 years?
I think we got the summary. Fair enough.
Well, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that directed towards someone in specific? Is that question directed towards someone in specific?
Well, most probably, Kulman Gising, the MD, should be the one who should be addressing this question.
Mr. Gising, would you like to take that on?
I think this demand and supply situation by 2022 or 24, definitely there are some, there will be some surplus we have seen. But in Nepal, we have provided the electricity market for IPPs, private sector. If we don't provide this market PPA, power purchase agreement, that there won't be any development in hydropower sector, because there is no immediate regional market integration that can the private sector go immediately and do the PPA. So what we have done is, if there are some surplus, we can be an aggregator of IPPs, small IPPs. There are almost 344 projects all over Nepal under construction and different stages of development. So they 10 megawatt, 50 megawatt, and 100 megawatt, different size of the projects are, and different modalities it is, they are under construction. So we have provided the market, domestic market, and if it is surplus for some time, mostly it will be surplus in the wet season only. Dry season, there won't be surplus. So wet season surplus, we can be the aggregator and sell to the regional market or bilateral market. So we are now addressing these market mechanisms, this day-ahead market and term-ahead market, and this short-term and long-term market also we are going to explore it, with the neighboring countries. So this is the policy of Nepal Electricity Authority. If you say that I cannot purchase the power today, and no power from the small developers, they will come into the market. So there will be definitely some surplus. We have to manage that. We have to manage daily surplus also, nighttime surplus, daytime surplus, evening time peak deficit we have to manage. But as a country's this organization, electricity leading organization, we have to manage that, and we'll be aggregator for that, and we'll sell to the regional and bilateral market also. So I think there won't be any spill of energy. There should not be any spill of energy in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to remind the audience that we have the questions up on the mobile app, if you would like to vote for that.
Maybe I would like to take a minute on this question.
Sure, of course, sir.
Let me assure you that 3,000 megawatt of surplus will not at all be a problem, because as I told you, we intend to add 450,000 megawatts of solar and wind by 2030. We have done the modeling in India through a very sophisticated software tool called Ordina. This shows that we can accommodate that, but provided we have 35,000 gigawatt hours of battery capacity. And that battery capacity I can easily substitute with 3,000 megawatt of power surplus power which you are projecting. So 3,000 megawatt of power is not at all going to be a problem, provided it is at the right price and the Nepal is able to put in the right regulation in place for export of that power. So I don't foresee at all a problem in absorbing this 3,000 megawatt of surplus power, hydropower being generated in Nepal. That's what my impressions are.
Thank you very much. So if you could just move forward to the mobile app on your phones and vote for the questions. You can refresh on the app. Go to the voting section. We will take the questions which gets the highest votes. We have 60 seconds to do that. कृपया यहाँको फोनमा रहेको एपमा जानु होला र त्यहाँ भोटिङ सेक्सन छ भोटिङ सेक्सनमा के प्रश्नहरू छन् होला तपाईले भोट गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ र हाईएस्ट भोट्स भएको प्रश्न हामीले अहिलेको क्विक सेसनमा लिने छौं हामीले 1 मिनेटको समय छ त्यसको लागि
Can we move on? Yeah, I'll take just one last question from the audience and then we'll come back to Professor Kadal.
Thank you. I'm Ramesh Vaidya. I have a question for our distinguished panelists from Bangladesh. Sir, right now, according to the IRENA data for 2018, the competitiveness of solar PV electricity compared to hydropower is about 1.81 on the global average. So gradually as solar gets cheaper in future years, if we have a choice of importing solar electricity from India versus hydropower from Nepal, how would you make a decision?
A very tricky question, but thank you for it. Of course, you know, I guess everyone knows the answer actually. There will be a definite comparison between a lot of issues, including the technicalities, tariff, terms and conditions, and above all, not above all, among others, the geopolitical issues. So we want renewable, clean, be it solar, be it hydro. So both being clean enough, the other factors will determine the decision, I guess. Thank you.
So would you like to,
Yes,
someone else answer
I'll
it?
hand over to Professor Kadal to provide his closing comments.
We just have, sorry, we asked the question on the mobile app. Let's have a look at what you voted for. So the question was, what is the most important step required to commence large-scale export of hydropower from Nepal to India? We had option 1, political consensus. I guess we have the highest vote for that, as well as the third one is transmission connectivity, gets the highest vote. The third one is availability of market to buy power, and the last one is Indian investment in Nepal. So that is what the public has voted.
Very revealing. Before we move on to Professor Kadal, I think Mr. Shai wants to have a comment on the demand question that came in.
You see, the first question that came, that Nepal has surplus power. Let's not be misguided by this, because we have handled that type of experience on several occasions in India, when states like Bihar, to which I belong, was consuming power per capita less than 100, and they were declaring that the capacity that has been made available to them by NTPC, they should sort of surrender that capacity. Now, 2004-05, Bihar was consuming 800 megawatt. They have massive transmission, distribution, sub-transmission, sub-distribution network. Today they are consuming close to 5,000 megawatt. So therefore, economics apart, economists apart, these calculations can keep happening at around 100 plus per kilowatt hour per head per year. When you have a global average of something like 2,700, China is beyond 3,500, even India has reached 1,100. That debate goes on. India also, sometimes people say it is surplus. We have a long way to go. This is an infrastructure where availability creates demand within certain range and within certain regime. So I don't think that and right now I think Kulman and his team, they are working hard to strengthen substantially their transmission and distribution infrastructure in country, in the provinces, 7 provinces, in the 6 industrial corridors, industrial zones, and they have a target to raise it to 3,000 megawatt in 3 years and 5,000 megawatt in 5 years. And I am somewhat closely associated with that exercise that is going on. So therefore, the present situation may be an outcome of our infrastructure gap between power that is available and power that can be consumed because of the interconnecting transmission and distribution network. So I think we have a long way to go. Even India has got a long way to go. Nepal has a long way to go on consume electricity, because if electricity consumption per capita doesn't increase, that means there is something wrong with our economic development as a whole. Thank you.
Professor Kadal, over to you, sir. Yes.
Thank you, moderator. distinguished keynote speaker, distinguished panelist, moderator, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my friends. Namaste and good afternoon. I think we are to some extent late. We have to finish the program within 12:50. As a chair, I have to say something about the program as well as summary of the panelist and keynote speakers' view and the way forward of the government of Nepal. First of all, I would like to thank IPAN for organizing this event. Grand event, I think so. It was supposed to be organized by the government of Nepal, National Planning Commission. But you have done this, you have done a great job. You have helped government of Nepal in this respect. I think it is the government-private sector partnership, in my view. I congratulate and thank for this event. As regards to deliberations from different personalities, R.B. Shahi, Mr. Gising, Chewang Rinjin, Rukub Ulhaq, Anirudh, and Galias. In view of R.B. Shahi, cooperation between different countries within SAARC region is going on related to power sector. Transmission line is under construction. India is getting about 10,000 megawatt of hydropower from Bhutan. And there are some projects which are going on between India and Bangladesh also. Accordingly, between India and Sri Lanka, some transmission lines are going to be constructed. India and Myanmar also there are some development. Nepal has great potentiality of producing hydropower. India has a great market. If we believe in a regional trade of power, we can get benefit from this potentiality in Indian market. We can develop this, and at last, while answering the question, he said, availability of power will create the demand. We should not worry about the demand. There is large market in India. Subhash Gising, Subhash Gising, I always used to say, sorry for that, Kulman Gising. Previously also, I once pronounced Subhash Gising. Kulman Gising also said there is no worry about the demand of power because still right now in some season we are not fulfilling our demand. Accordingly, we are creating new market also. We are changing the behavior of consumers also. And our future demand, internal demand of our country would be greater than this. In the same way, we do have Indian market and Bangladeshi market also. That's why we should not worry about this. we should develop the production. This was his view, in my opinion. Accordingly, Anish Garg also said, we have, yes, Anish Garg presented Nepal's situation from the perspective of private sector. And he said, in 2024, we will have about 4,000 megawatt surplus. For that, we have to create the new market. Our production, basically from in private sector, is going on in well style. Chawang Rinjin from Bhutan share the experience of Bhutan in relation to power trade. He said Nepal can benefit a large from partnering with India and other countries in relation to power. Nepal has potential of private investment also. In the same way, Rakub ul Haq from Bangladesh said, in Bangladesh also, power production is going on, but it is insufficient. In Bangladesh, the probability of solar energy is very few because the land is very few and it is suited to agriculture also. Nepal has hydropower resource a lot. That's why we can develop our partnership, exporting power from Nepal and importing in Bangladesh. And Galius Dragalis concluded that we should not regret in developing power sector in Nepal and in this region also. We have to develop, we should go on, and we will support her that in future also. These are the major things that were expressed here. And at last, I would like to say, from the viewpoint of National Planning Commission, we have just published approach paper of 15th plan. And with that plan, we have vision for 25 years. As per approach paper, for this current 5th year plan, we have the expectation of producing 5,000 megawatt of hydropower. Right now, as already mentioned, per capita consumption is 235, but in our paper it is 198 per capita. We have the plan of reaching that per capita consumption to 700 kilowatt per year. Right now in Nepal, 130, there are 753 municipalities, as we know. 130 municipalities are not connected with power grid. That's why in National Planning Commission's view, we have the market, we have to do a lot in that sector also. For 25 years vision, we have estimated 40,000 megawatt of power production, 35,000 megawatt from hydro and 5,000 megawatt from renewable energy, 40,000. And at that time, we will have 3,500 per capita consumption. This is our estimation right now. The growth rate that we are estimating, we have expected is for this 5 year, next 5 year, it is 9.6, and for 25 years, it would be about more than 10%. And for getting this growth rate and developing our economy, after 25 years, we have expected our income would be in par with the developed countries right now. As the government is saying, prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. We have developed 10 goals related to prosperous Nepal and happy Nepali. 4 goals are related to prosperous Nepal and 6 goals are related to happy Nepalis. All goals are related to power sector development. Power is taken as the driver of the economy. The 10% growth rate, it is actually 10.5%, is to be driven by the power. Power is the base of getting prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. We think so. That's why we should develop power sector in Nepal. We do have market as committed by our former Secretary of India. India is committed to power sector development, and India is committed to economic development also. For getting this development, we have to develop power. Government of Nepal has made strategy as well as policy. There are 10 strategies related to energy sector development and 35 policies in this regard. We can see all these policies and strategies in our approach paper. We are hopeful to the future. We can fulfill the great aspiration of Nepalese people, prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. We think so. With these words, I would like to conclude the session. Thank you to keynote speaker. Thank you to all panelists and all friends also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Session Chair, Professor Dr. Pushparaj Khare, Honorable Vice Chairman. I'd like to request the panel to please be seated wherever you are. We have a token of appreciation which we would like to present to all of you on the stage. Quickly before that, on your app, we have uploaded another question. The question is Nepalese and Bhutanese hydropower cost competitive in South Asian region? The question is up now. You can vote for it. We'll show you the results right about now. I'd like to request the Chair, Professor Dr. Pushparaj Khare, to present the token of memento to our keynote speaker, our moderators, as well as our panels. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker, Mr. R.V. Shahi, former Secretary, Government of India. To our presenter, I believe, Mr. Ashish Garg. To our moderator, Mr. Subhanshu Patnaik. To our panelists, Mr. Kulman Gising, Mr. Chewang Rinjin, Kulman Sir, Mr. Chewang Rinjin, to Mr. Muhammad Rukun Al Hassan, to Mr. Gailis Dragalis, Mr. Anirudh Kumar, to Joint Secretary, Ministry of Power, Government of India. And I would like to request the President of IPAN, Shailendra Guragai, to present the token of memento to our chair for the first session. In the meantime, please do keep voting. We will show the results right away. I'd also like to request for a quick group photo of the panel and the speakers right after this. Can we have a quick photo, please, gentlemen?